Hey, what's up, Shadow Priest buddies? I am going to go over loot today because I feel like I should get this out before I get super busy, and I think it's a worthwhile video to make. So every tier, or every new tier, I kind of map out all the raid loot and the Mythic Plus loot, and the reason why I do this is to figure out what's good in the raid, and what slots does the raid not really cover that well, like maybe it doesn't have crit haste, and maybe a dungeon has crit haste in that slot. The other thing is corruption this time around really makes things kind of interesting. So even if something is like, I don't know, like a 100 DPS gain in the raid, it's probably going to be worth like spamming Mythic Plus for that same slot, because the corruption is just going to make up for that 100 DPS it could have got on the raid item. So I kind of mapped out kind of like the best in slot list, both from raid and dungeons, and I actually have a very short list of this is the item we want, this is the slot, and this is the source. So let's go through it. Azerite's gonna be, well, actually before I go through this, I'm gonna show you an add-on that I have. I have an add-on called Item Wishlist, in case you're interested in it. Let you add items from like the dungeon journal. So like say, you know, Nzoth, and we'll go like helmet. So I can just like click in this box, and then I've already added it, so I don't want to like add it again. But if I go to the item and I click on it, I could put it in a category, and I could put a note on it. So, in the case of helmets, we'll start with helmets. Nzoth is the best in slot helmet. Mostly this is because of the item level in the helmet is like plus 10 higher on the final two bosses of the raid. So, like on Mythic, it's a 485, and, you know, other Azerite... I have to take the filter off. We'll go Skitra as a chest. So Mythic base is 475, so the last two bosses are plus 10. So this kind of made Azerite a little bit interesting to think about, because that also means that the heroic item, so again, 475 for Mythic. If I go to Nzoth's Azerite, it's 470. So heroic Nzoth helmet is only 5 item levels less than the other bosses of Mythic. So what I did is I mapped out all the Azerite, and with the case of helmets, go back and find it. So in the case of helmets, Nzoth is best because his traits are really good. However, the M.Illgynoth helmet, it's going to be 10 item levels below Nzoth, but it has overwhelming power, so it is slightly better, and if they were the same item level, M.Illgynoth would be better. So the way that these helmets are going to work out is you're going to want the... If you're a Mythic Raider, this is how it'll work. You'll get a heroic Nzoth helmet, and then later on when you kill M.Illgynoth, you want the M.Illgynoth Mythic helmet, and it's like 685 DPS gain or something along those lines. Then eventually you get the Nzoth helmet, and that's like another 600 something DPS gain. So that's the path, is heroic Nzoth, Mythic M.Illgynoth, and then Mythic Nzoth. No other helmet's worth your time, don't blow your residuum on that. For the shoulders, is also on the final two bosses, it's on Carapace, so that's also 10 item levels higher. So plan on getting those shoulders, they're really, really good. I thought about doing residuum shoulders, however, you know, we're gonna get those shoulders at 470 from heroic. Our chest is actually the weakest, and our chest is off Raden, but it's not gonna... We're kind of stuck in the 460 heroic item level until we can kill him on Mythic. So that's where I plan on blowing the residuum. That way, you know, during progress, up until that point, it's a way of getting a Mythic level chest if I get lucky, and if not, then I guess I'm just gonna have to wait. But so those are the pieces, and I'm gonna put in the description kind of like a summary of all this. But those are definitely the Azerite pieces you want. and I'm personally going to roll Residuum Chest, because I think it's the best bang for the buck, and even if I don't roll an upgrade, it lets me trade the Skitra chest, which will probably be better overall for everybody. So next slot down, we already talked about shoulders, and we already talked about chest. Wrists. So the thing about wrists, there is some crit haste in the raid. They come from Hivemine. They're crit haste, which is great. However, we're going to only have limited lockouts to get corruption, so the chances of us getting a corrupted pair of wrists is pretty low. So what I see happening is, grab them if you get them, but I wouldn't blow a bonus roll, because you can go get a tall wrist, which is the other one I put in the list here. You can spam a tall and get corruption on your wrist. So if you get corrupted a tall wrist at 465, it's going to be better than the 475 in Mythic. So you are going to sacrifice a little bit of DPS. I think it's about 120 DPS loss over base. So a tall I wouldn't put high on the list, because it's going to be more important dungeons to spam first. So I'm going to keep going through all the slots, and I'll tell you kind of where you're going to want to put your time. For gloves and pants, go tailoring, like just no question, and roll till you get crit haste, obviously. For the belt, the freehold belt is, let me go back over here. The freehold belt, base out of the 465 at the end of dungeon loot and freehold, beats the raid belt because it's mastery heavy. Don't take the raid belt under any conditions. Go get a freehold belt, spam it till you get one. It's a flat upgrade even if it doesn't corrupt, and fish it for a corruption as well, because that's going to be like a huge spammable activity. You could put your time into it and eventually get corruption. For go in order, boots. So for boots, there's actually crit haste boots in Mechagon. There's 2 pairs. So as I talk about rings, you're going to see why we're going to be spamming a lot of Mechagon for the 2 set rings. That's also where you're going to want to fish boots at. And the Mechagon do sim straight upgrade as well over the raid boots. So you definitely want to get boots out of Mechagon, no question. If you get a temple key, you could get some crit haste boots out of there as well. So I wouldn't turn down a temple run for that reason. Again, you could get a crit haste pair from temple and maybe get some corruption on them. The next slot down is rings. So rings were pretty interesting. Usually jewel crafting is like flat bis. Not this time around. So the Mechagon rings, if you're not familiar with them, they are a 2 set, and you're gonna want both pieces. So the first set says crit haste ring. If I use 3 different spells or abilities on the same target, I'm gonna proc haste if I get the other ring. And the other ring says, okay, equip this and you get haste. They don't work by themselves, you have to have both slots. So this is why I'm still a jewel crafter, because I'm gonna craft my 2 JC rings to last me a week or 2, or however long it takes me to get the best in slot 2 set out of Mechagon. Like, just so you know, the Mechagon rings that I put in here sim 344 DPS ahead of JC, and I didn't even sim the other one, which is behind the target criteria. That might also work. So they're flat out bis for everybody. Everyone's gonna want that dungeon, and it's your #1 priority spam if you've done your dailies, like spam Mechagon for sure. I made a reference in here just for the hell of it. Obviously the freehold ring is still really good, but you're just gonna want Mechagon rings because of the 2 set interaction. Same thing with the Siege of Borealis. But they could be still good intermediate rings if you don't have JC, and you haven't gotten a Mechagon ring yet. Or set rings. You're gonna probably need both sets to make the Mechagon worth it, because the other one has mastery on it. Guess it depends on if you socketed the item or not. For trinkets, trinkets are got some interesting things going on. I would pay attention. There could be some nerfs coming. We don't know. In the raid, there's a trinket off the 3rd boss, Skitra. It is mega bis. Heroic beats out every single other trinket in Mythic, period. The trinket is so broken at the moment, even getting a normal trinket, it would be good. The other slot for us is either going to be a claw, which is off the second boss, Maut, or if you happen to have a high enough forge lure, the lure does compete pretty good with this trinket. So I actually got lucky and got a 455 lure with a socket. It's equal to a Mythic claw, or within a margin of error. I'm waiting to see if there's any changes to Sims though, so take it with a huge grain of salt. The only other trinket that I'd keep an eye on is the Mechagon punch card trinkets. I'm not sure how they're actually going to pan out, so just, you might have to sim those and check. So keep it on your radar for sure. But generally it's about Shredder and it's about Claw. Fellow Shadow Priest of mine said that he plans on spamming LFR even in week 1, that it's available, if he doesn't already have one, to get his hands on a Shredder, because they're just that good for their item level. For weapons, we were lucky this time around. We got a crit haste offhand in the raid. It's been a couple of tiers since they've given us a crit haste weapon of any kind. That drops from Zanesh. I guess this could be considered lucky. Same boss also seems to drop the weapon we want. There is a wand, but I think this mace is going to be better. It's a haste verse mace, and it comes guaranteed corrupted. So I'm thinking this is the one we go for. There is also a wand, and I'll try to find it real quick. I don't think I'll go this route, plus I can't transmog Xalatath, so yeah, I don't like wands. It has to be like super megabyss. So the wand is does actually also have corruption, but it's not as good. And it's also got mastery on it. But it is crit heavy, so it is probably a good alternative. It's also on M.Illgynoth, which is deeper into the raid. I know there's some skips or whatnot, so not sure if you might get your hands on the wand faster, but definitely the alternative weapon is definitely the wand. But I'm thinking Zanesh is what we're kind of shooting for. So that's all the slots, and that's what we want, period. So what does this mean? We just farm the raid, right? Wait for the lockout, use our bonus rolls. Well, not necessarily. Let's walk through this. There's quite a few slots that we don't want from the raid, or the raid is such a minor upgrade that we're going to want to spam for corruption on it. So number 1 priority is going to be the belt. The belt from Freehold is a flat, it's flat better than Mythic. Let me just go back, find it. This at 465 is equal to a Mythic belt, straight up. So just run the highest, I think it's a 15? Or whatever the base item level loot caps out. You don't even need to get lucky in your cache. This is just the end of the dungeon loot. So it's so easy to get because you could literally spam it until you get it. Once you get a Freehold belt, generally speaking, you want to be getting your Mechagon rings, so spam Mechagon until you get both rings and a pair of boots. If you get both rings and you still don't have the boots, you can also target Temple. And the other thing is a tall as well. So those are your slots. Wrists, boots, and belt to fish your corruption on. We could get corruption in the raid, but it's going to be extremely limited, and kind of like the lockout itself is going to make it less likely to see raid corrupted gear outside of the guaranteed corrupted items. Sure, you can get lucky, but it's just probably not going to happen, so I don't plan around that. So we're going to spam Freehold, we're going to spam Mechagon is actually number 1. And if we got all those other slots covered, eventually a tall. A tall isn't as good because the raid risks aren't too bad, but definitely on the list, and I would never turn down any of those keys. They're very, very high value for us. And again, Residuum, I recommend a chest right now. It looked like the best chance to pay off overall and not regret spending it. And I would gamble it because eventually we do get the Raden chest. It's not like last year. We required the Biz shoulders from Residuum last year. This year, we're gonna get covered by the raid eventually. So gamble this time and don't feel bad if you don't get lucky, because eventually the boss loot is gonna take care of you. bonus rolls, week 1, I am going to be spamming for my Azerite in Heroic. The Nzoth helmet is so strong. Nothing really beats it except the M.Illgynoth helmet. So you want to get that pronto for progression. So Nzoth helmet, the Carapace, actually all your Azerite, but definitely the final 2 bosses of Azerite. Calculate out your rolls. You really only need to save bonus rolls for like early Mythic. Is going to be the Shredder, which is on Skitra, boss number 3, and boss number 2, Maut, for the Claw. And that's it. Everything else is looking like blow it in Heroic, and I would focus on the Azerite. If you get your Azerite super easy and you have extra rolls, you can consider blowing a roll on a Shredder. I think it's a gray area, and I still haven't committed to what I'm going to do there. But those are like the high value items for sure. And if you follow the path that I've laid out, it's the way to get geared up as quickly as possible. And the reason why I think it's important is like Shadow is very gear dependent, and a little bit of effort in planning out your gear is going to go a long way with Shadow. It's going to reward that time that you took to kind of like think through it and like map it out and stuff like that. Well, hope this was helpful. I'm going to throw some notes down in the description. And if there's any questions, feel free to give me a comment and I'll see what I can do. Later.